Hi, today we're starting a series on Joshua. We know something about Joshua. We know him as Moses' successor, the one who guided the children of Israel through the miraculously parted Jordan River into the Promised Land. We know him as the one who led the 7-day march around Jericho before the walls of that magnificent city fell. He commanded the Israelite armies as they conquered nations in the land of Canaan. And he was the man of God who, at the end of his days, challenged the nation to choose to serve whomever they wanted, but ended with these words, "But for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." What a great man of God. But how did Joshua get to that point? What were his credentials? What training did he receive that made him be such a successful leader? And most of all, why did Joshua be the one that God chose? Well, let's look at them. We're going to start in our series looking back before Canaan. We're going to see him in the wilderness. We're going to follow him through those 40 years and see what happens to him. Following 400 years of slavery and the 10 plagues that were sent against Pharaoh and the land of Egypt, the Israelites were told to make their quick departure for their long journey to the Promised Land. They crossed that Red Sea. The waters parted so that the fleeing Israelites could quickly pass through, and then those waters collapsed on the Egyptian army. After that victorious and very traumatic event, the nomadic Israelites started their journey more and more in the wilderness. However, they were led on a way that they should have avoided war, because Exodus 13:17 says, "Then it came to pass when Pharaoh had not let the people go that God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although that way was near. For God said, lest the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt." So, in the very beginning, they were prevented from any type of war or any type of battle, and they just went through a long, weary journey. And for 2 months, all was peaceful after the Red Sea until Exodus 17:8. "Now Amalek came and fought with Israel in Rephidim." Years later, Moses gave the details of this surprise attack. Deuteronomy 25:17 and 18 says, "Remember what Amalek did to you on the way as you were coming out of Egypt, how he met you on the way and attacked your rear ranks, all the stragglers at your rear, when you were tired and weary, and he did not fear God." And that is when we met Joshua. For the very first time, we see his name appear, because in 17:19, "And Moses said to Joshua, choose us some men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand." We're given no introduction to Joshua, or why out of the 600,000 men that were with Joshua, that had crossed the Red Sea, that had left Egypt, that this one man was chosen. He was chosen by Moses to lead this battle. All we know is that Moses selected him to lead the battle against Amalek. Now, you and I hear a lot about on-the-job training today. A lot of places give that because the turnover among employees is just so high, and it's so hard to get employees. They'll say, "We'll train you. We'll give you all the training that you need. Just sign up." Well, Joshua was given this responsibility of head recruiter and battle commander, and it was dropped on him with no training and no direction. What was Joshua facing? To me, it seemed like an almost impossible task. Moses told Joshua to choose men to fight the very next day while he went up on the hill with the rod of God. This lets us know that Moses had absolutely no intention of fighting. Moses was not a warrior either. But not only that, not only was he not going to fight, he was not going to be around so that Joshua could ask him for advice. He was not going to be around in case things went south and Joshua needed help. Joshua said, "You go there and I'm going there." Well, not only did Joshua not receive any training or any help from Moses, he absolutely had no experience as a warrior. All of his life, Joshua and all the other men that were with him, everybody else that he had to choose from, were brought up and raised as slaves. They were not soldiers. They were trained to be that, and now Joshua had to select from men who were not soldiers, men that he could make into soldiers, and men willing to follow his command. Moses says, "I'm going to be up there. I'm the one that they know hears from God. I'm the one that speaks to them. But now, Joshua, I want you to tell them what to do. I want you to tell them what they ought to do." So he had to select men willing to be soldiers and willing to follow him. And from a people that were already, it says, tired and weary. You know what it's like to be asked to do something. You think, I don't know if I can do just one more thing. I've done all I can do. These people have been walking for 2 months out in the wilderness. They've crossed the Red Sea. They've left Israel, but they don't know where the promised land is. They've never seen it, and now they're being attacked. And somebody by the name of Joshua is asking them to fight against Amalek, who doesn't fight fair, and Amalek who certainly does not believe in God. And the fact that Amalek did not believe in God was probably Joshua's greatest advantage, because Joshua served the living God. So in all of this, what qualified Joshua to lead? Well, first of all, he was born a slave. You might think that doesn't make him much of a leader. Well, Pharaoh made all of the Israelites slaves so that they would not fight. Joshua was a bricklayer. He was a pyramid builder. Joshua was never given a weapon, and he was never allowed to defend himself. But there were very important lessons that Joshua did learn as a slave. First of all, he learned he had to obey orders. He may not have liked those Egyptians who were over him, but he knew that he had to obey them no matter what. And so if Joshua had learned from childhood to obey orders from people that he did not like, how much more would he obey the word of Moses, whom he loved and respected? Then, as a slave, he learned to keep going no matter how hard he had to work. And now, as he's getting ready to fight this battle, it says that he's tired and he's weary, but he's learned as a slave, it doesn't matter if you're tired. You've got to keep going. You've got to produce the bricks. You've got to build the pyramids. You've got to do this no matter what. And so Joshua kept going. He got the people together. He told them they had to fight. They had to keep going. And then you have to get the job done under impossible odds. Joshua remembered those days when he was tired and weary, but not only that, he had to make bricks when he wasn't given the material to make the bricks with. And now he's told, You win the battle even though you don't have the soldiers to fight with you. Joshua had been under impossible odds before. He had been told that he had to keep going before, and he had been told that he had to obey the orders, and now here he is with Moses, with the man of God. And he does the same. And secondly, we learn another lesson that he learned from all of this was Joshua saw Moses, his mentor, the man of God, with the rod. You see, Moses was also a former slave, but Moses stood up to Pharaoh, and miracles happen. So if Moses can stand up to Pharaoh, Joshua knew he could stand up to this little Amalek. Joshua saw that during the plagues sent on Israel, and even during that final plague when the Passover lamb was slain and the blood was put on the doorpost, and the firstborn of the Israelites were saved while the firstborn of the Egyptians were slain, that they were set apart. Miracles happened, and God had set them apart as his chosen people. God had used Moses to do the impossible. With that rod, the Red Sea had opened. With that rod in his hand, water had come from the rock. And now Moses said, you fight, and I'm going to hold the rod of God. The Israelites had left Egypt and slavery for a new life. Joshua was not going back. He was not going back to Egypt, and he was not going back to slavery. So here we go. He's leading the people in battle. But even in this, he discovers it's not all about him and all of his great ability. In Exodus 17:10 through 13, so Joshua did as Moses said to him and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. And so it was, when Moses held up his hand, that Israel prevailed, and when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands became heavy, so that they took a stone and put under him, and he sat on it. And Aaron and Hur supported his hand, one on one side and one on the other side. And his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. So Joshua defeated Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. Joshua fought the battle in the physical. Joshua defeated Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword, it says. But what was going on in the spiritual? That was where Moses was fighting. Moses was fighting that spiritual battle. He was holding the rod up. He was praying, and he was calling on God that Israel would prevail. Joshua won in the physical only because Moses prevailed in the spiritual. Fighting went Joshua's way only when Moses' hands remained uplifted and he was praying to God. Joshua learned some important lessons. He took what he had learned as a slave and as an observer to become the man that Moses put in charge of a battle. He learned that even great leaders like Moses could not win a battle without help from other people, Aaron and Hur, but most of all, without help from God, and that neither could he. Joshua could not win unless he had people around him and unless he had God's help. Every lesson learned in the hard times is important in making you who you are or who you are becoming. Each lesson can be used by God. No matter what they are, no matter how hard they are, God uses everything. God helped Moses, and so Joshua knew that he would also help him. Joshua discovered that the perspective gained by a lifetime of hard times can be changed in a short time of seeing God work. See, Joshua grew up as a slave. He grew up looking at life. He didn't know when he was a young boy that Moses was going to come and deliver him. He didn't know as a man when he saw Moses appear and he saw those first plagues come. that turned the water into blood everywhere, that he was going to make it through. He did not know, even when he left the promised land or left for the promised land, that it was not going to happen right away. But yet, even in that lifetime of going through hardships, he recognized in just a moment that having God on his side could make a difference, could turn his life around. And he recognized that seeing God at work made all the difference. These lessons caused him to know that one person and God will make a difference. Joshua had no idea when Amalek attacked him on that day that the very next day he would be put in charge. He would become the commander, that he, a former slave, would lead the royal guard army. And you have no idea. You have no idea what God has planned for you tomorrow. Just know that he has prepared you for whatever your battle will be, no matter how hard it is. You and God will make all the difference. God will never waste anything. He will use every circumstance that he has ever brought you to make you into the person that he has created you to be. And believe me, God has never intended for you to live your life as a slave. Joshua started as a slave, but he's on his way to becoming the leader and the man that God has called him to do. We see him today. He's learned some physical battles. He's gone through them, and he's learned how to conquer that. Next time, we're going to see him in a new role, the role of middle management, in a spiritual sense, too. So stay tuned for that.